Hello everyone and welcome. Today we re-diving into one of the most significant and often overlooked chapters of post-colonial history. The Congo Crisis, which took place between 1960 and 1965, this conflict emerged just after the Congo gained independence from Belgium, and it became a flashpoint during the Cold War. It was a struggle for power, identity, and survival, involving multiple nations, local factions, and Cold War superpowers. So, let us rewind the clock to 1960 and explore the events that shaped this pivotal moment in African history. Let's start with the Congo's independence. For decades, the Congo had been a colony of Belgium. The exploitation was brutal. Leopold II, the Belgian king, treated the Congo as his personal property, and it was infamous for horrific abuses, forced labor, mass killings, and widespread disease. After international outcry and the 1908 reforms, Belgium formally took control of the Congo, but exploitation continued. By the late 1950s, like much of Africa, the Congo began to stir with nationalist movements. The 1950s saw increased pressure from the Congolese people for independence. The Belgian government, caught off guard by these demands, began pushing forward reforms. But the push for independence happened fast and unexpectedly, and by 1960, Belgium had to act. Independence was granted on June 30, 1960. The newly formed Democratic Republic of the Congo was born. The newly appointed Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba, emerged as a symbol of Congolese nationalism. Lumumba was charismatic, a staunch advocate for independence, and committed to uniting the country's diverse ethnic and political groups. He was a man of the people, and his vision for a free and prosperous Congo resonated deeply with many. But his rise to power came with its own complications. Upon independence, the Congo was not ready for self-rule. The new state faced immediate challenges. It was a vast country with more than 200 different ethnic groups, no strong national infrastructure, and no real experience in self-governance. In fact, the Congo had fewer than 30 university graduates at the time. The colonial administration had done little to prepare the country for independence. Moreover, the Congolese army, the force public, was made up mostly of Congolese soldiers, but it was commanded by white Belgian officers. When independence came, the soldiers rebelled. They were angry about the treatment they had received from their Belgian officers. This rebellion led to widespread disorder and a breakdown of the military's control. The situation quickly spiraled out of control, and the Belgian authorities, afraid that chaos would spread, decided to intervene militarily, claiming that they were protecting Belgian citizens and their interests. This was the backdrop against which Lumumba's government was trying to take shape. And things were about to get even more complicated. In the south, the mineral-rich province of Katanga, led by Moise Tshombe, declared its independence. Katanga was home to much of the Congo's wealth, and Tshombe's secession was backed by Belgian interests, who wanted to maintain control over the lucrative mining industry. Tshombe's declaration sent shockwaves through the country. The central government in Kinshasa, led by Lumumba, viewed the secession as a direct challenge to the country's sovereignty. Lumumba, frustrated and desperate to maintain the unity of the country, sought help from the United Nations. The UN, however, was hesitant to get involved in what was already becoming a complex international problem. The United Nations, led by Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld, sent peacekeepers to the Congo in 1960 in an effort to stabilize the country. But the UN forces weren't designed to intervene in a civil war or to confront secessionists. Their mandate was to keep the peace between the new government and Belgian forces, not to take sides in internal conflicts. The situation only became more tense. The UN troops, despite their large numbers, weren't able to stop the violence between Lumumba's government and the secessionists. The UN, for all its diplomatic efforts, seemed powerless in the face of growing disorder. As the Congo crisis deepened, Cold War geopolitics entered the fray. Lumumba, frustrated with the lack of support from the West, turned to the Soviet Union for help. The The Soviet Union was eager to gain influence in the newly independent Congo, seeing it as an opportunity to expand its reach in Africa. Lumumba's move to accept Soviet assistance alarmed the United States, which feared that a Soviet-backed government in the heart of Africa could tilt the balance of power during the Cold War. This led to the CIA getting involved in Congo's affairs. The United States, worried about the spread of communism, worked to undermine Lumumba's government. There were reports of attempts by the CIA to have Lumumba assassinated, and they provided support to his political opponents, including Colonel Joseph Mobutu, a military officer who had his own ambitions. Despite his charisma and vision, Lumumba's time in power was short-lived. The tension between him and the secessionists in Katanga, combined with a growing international interference, led to a breakdown in his ability to govern. In September 1960, Lumumba was deposed by a coup led by Joseph Mobutu, who took control of the country. In January 1961, Lumumba was captured and handed over to the secessionists in Katanga, where he was executed. His assassination, allegedly with the complicity of both Belgian and American intelligence agencies, marked a turning point in the Congo's history. Lumumba became a martyr for many Congolese, a symbol of the struggle for independence and the cost of African self-determination. After Lumumba's death, Mobutu consolidated power and began a long reign over the Congo. In 1965, Mobutu officially took control of the country, renaming it Zaire and ruling it with an iron fist for the next 3 decades. His rule was marked by corruption, oppression, and the centralization of power. Mobutu's leadership, while stabilizing the country in the short term, ultimately led to economic decline and political turmoil in the long run. The Congo crisis had profound effects, not only on the Congo, but on Africa and the world. The legacy of this period is still felt today. The nation, in the throes of its fight for self-determination, had to contend with foreign powers, internal divisions, and the pressures of a new Cold War world order. The Congo crisis also highlighted the complexities of post-colonial states, how quickly new nations could descend into chaos without proper support or infrastructure, and the impact of foreign interference, whether by Belgium, the United States, or the Soviet Union, had long-lasting consequences for the Congo's political landscape. In the end, the Congo crisis was more than just a struggle for power. It was a battle for the future of a nation trying to find its way in a rapidly changing world. As we wrap up today's lecture, remember that the Congo crisis, although over 60 years ago, continues to resonate in the modern-day Congo, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Understanding this crisis helps us better appreciate the complexity of post-colonial states and the lasting impact of Cold War politics on the African continent. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this history interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, feel free to leave any questions or comments below, and I'll be happy to discuss this further. See you next time.